Hello everybody. Today we'll be discussing about acidity and its homeopathic management. We'll be covering what acidity is, the causes, symptoms, pathophysiology, and its homeopathic management. So what is acidity? Set of symptoms caused by excessive production of acid by the gastric glands of the body is termed as acidity. Now, normally our human body produces about 2.5 liters per day of gastric juice, and thereby the lumen of the stomach has the pH of 1 to 2. Now, what are the causes leading to acidity? There are several external causes or factors that lead to acidity, namely eating habits when you have oily and spicy food, stress, fat diets, smoking, lack of exercise, alcohol, irregular eating, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, or infection by Helicobacter pylori. Now the symptoms are caused when the hydrochloric acid level is more inside the stomach. The irritation is thereby seen about the stomach, and when it starts to irritate this orifices known as sphincters, known as lower esophageal sphincter and the pylori sphincter, thereby it causes irritation, inflammation, and erosions. Will lead to peptic ulcers or GERD, that is gastroesophageal reflux disorders or diseases, inflammatory bowel diseases, etc. Now let us see the symptoms. So the symptoms affects the whole body. Headache, drowsiness, irritable mood, sour belching, burping, nausea, vomiting, metallic taste of stomach, dental erosion, bad breath. Now, what do you mean metallic taste of stomach? That is, the acidic juice that is being regurgitated along with the food leaves a sort of metallic taste inside the mouth. Then we can see dry cough, hoarseness, sore throat, heartburn, dyspepsia, gastric inflammation, pain and discomfort of the upper abdomen, post-meal heaviness, and constipation. Now let us see the pathophysiology. It's very interesting that once we know the physiology of any process, we can easily understand what exactly is happening inside and why there is some changes and what happens during that changes. So here is the sectional part of the gastric gland or gastric mucosa for the lumen. Basically it's divided into mucosa, submucosa, and muscularis. Serosa is also there. Now all the basic things are happening at this level, like gastric glands are present here. We can see gastric pits here. This is a muscularis mucosa layer. Now the submucosa contains arteries and veins, capillaries and all that supplies. Muscularis, that's further divided into 3, but for the meantime it's just simply broadly written as muscularis. Now let us see deeply about the gastric glands, which is what we are about to discuss here. The gastric glands has gastric pits, like we mentioned, and these are made up of different types of cells. Those are being arranged like chief cells, which secretes pepsinogen and gastric lipase into the lumen. Parietal cells, which secrete gastric acid and intrinsic factor. These parietal cells act as HCl promoter as well as inhibitor. Now the enterochromaffin cells, which we in short will be calling as ECL, it secretes histamine, which also promotes the secretion of hydrochloric acid inside the stomach lumen. Then there is G cells, which secretes gastrin, again an hydrochloric acid promoter. D cells, these are the hydrochloric acid inhibitors, along with the mucus neck cell, which secrete mucus and bicarbonate inside the stomach, which neutralizes the hydrochloric acid, thereby it acts as hydrochloric acid inhibitor. Let us go through it in detail. The parietal cell. What does the parietal cell do and how does it function? The parietal cell, when the nerve signals the process of eating, releases the hydrochloric acid via a proton pump mechanism where the hydrogen ion is sent into the stomach lumen in exchange of potassium ion. Then again, the potassium ion is sent into the stomach lumen along with the chlorine ion, and these two combine together inside the stomach lumen to become hydrochloric acid. The parietal cells have a lot of receptors on the cell surface, like muscarinic receptor, prostaglandin E2 receptor, histamine 2 receptor, gastrin receptor. These all receptors help, which we will learn later on, to secrete hydrochloric acid inside the lumen of the stomach. The next cell that we have mentioned before, enterochromaffin cells or ECL. This secretes histamine. Now, this is a parietal cell and this is enterochromaffin cell. The enterochromaffin cell secretes histamine, which attaches itself to the H2 receptor on the surface of the parietal cell, as we had mentioned before. And thereby stimulating the HCl secretion. Now comes the G cells. The G cells secretes gastrin into the blood. Gastrin then binds itself to the gastrin receptor on the ECL, that is enterochromaffin cells, and also on the gastrin receptor on the parietal cell. These two function differently. The gastrin receptor that is on the surface of the parietal cell directly stimulates the release of hydrochloric acid inside the lumen. Here on the ECL, it stimulates the secretion of histamine, which will attach itself to the H2 receptor on the parietal cell and thereby secrete the HCl. Another pathway for the acid release is via the vagus nerves, the largest parasympathetic nerve supplying the stomach. Now what it does is, it sends acetylcholine. These acetylcholine binds to the muscarinic receptors on the parietal cell. Like we mentioned, there is muscarinic receptor on the parietal cell, as well as there is muscarinic receptor on the ECL. Both of them causes the release of hydrochloric acid. So the parietal cells, enterochromaffin cells, G cells and vagus nerves promotes the release of hydrochloric acid into the stomach. Now, once it's released, it has to be inhibited or neutralized in order to have a normal balance inside the body. So, which all cells help is T cells as well as inflammatory mediators like prostaglandins E2 and prostaglandin I2 to be specific. Now the D cells They release a hormone known as somatostatin, which is released into the blood, and that inhibits the hydrochloric acid secretion. Now, how does the prostaglandins help? See, it is a derivative of arachidonic acid via the enzyme COX. Secrete prostaglandin I2 and prostaglandin E2. Now, these prostaglandin I2 and prostaglandin E2 have specific receptors, one on the parietal cell and one on the activated mucous cell. The prostaglandin E2 binds to the parietal cell, and this decreases or inhibits the HCl secretion. The prostaglandin I2 attaches itself to the mucous cell, activated mucous cell. On its surface there is a receptor, it attaches itself there and causes the release of mucus and bicarbonate from the mucous cell. This, when it enters the lumen of the stomach, neutralizes the hydrochloric acid. Therefore, the mucus and the bicarbonate that is being secreted by the mucous cell is very important in terms of neutralizing the harmful effect of the hydrochloric acid. So in acidity, what happens, as we have seen the normal physiology of secretion of hydrochloric acid, so in acidity, the percentage of the hydrochloric acid is more. Why? Simple. Either there is some mechanism in the pathophysiology or the normal physiology is deranged by the imbalance of the physiological mechanism, or by improper protective mechanism system, that is mucus and bicarbonate releasing system, and also by Helicobacter pylori infections or certain medication like NSAIDs. So this is basically the pathophysiology of acidity. Basically how the hydrochloric acid is secreted in the stomach, and when it runs out of the balance, the acidity condition is developed. For better retention of this topic, acidity and homeopathic management, I am dividing this video into two parts. Part 1 will be dealing with acidity, causes, symptoms and pathophysiology, and the part 2 of this topic will be dealing with the homeopathic management. The videos are brought to you by Dr. Shalini's Homeopathic Clinic.